Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rakan, a product designer working in London, and in part 2 of this video series, we're developing an Ali Abdaal website using Webflow, a no-code solution tool. In part 1, we designed the website in Figma, so be sure to click on this video over here to watch part 1 on how we designed the video. And let's get started. So let's just get started on Webflow. So head into the link in the description below to sign up and create a free account on Webflow. It's a great no-code solution tool. Reason being is because there's a great community around it. It's really easy to pick up. There's great tutorials around the web. And when using Figma, it follows really similar principles around creating components. And it's just a great all-round no-code tool that allows you to scale up really easily. Now that we've signed into Webflow, we can create a new project. We click this blue button here in the top right, and we get all the templates as mentioned, which are all free. But because we've created our design in Figma, it's best to create a blank site from scratch so we can fully customize things. So you just give a project name. We're just going to call it Ali's Linktree site. And once you've done that, you just click create project. So it'll just take a couple of seconds and now we're sorted. And when you go into Webflow, you get this blank canvas here. And at the top here, this is basically you designing for desktop, which we're doing in this video here. And it's a base breakpoint and everything else will basically design outwards from here. So here's the super important components that we mentioned. So if you want to add, for example, a navbar or for example, a map, all of this is out of the box and you can use straight away a video, an image, a YouTube video. It's really simple to do. So we're getting started with a navbar onto the site. So one thing you can do, because Figma is browser based, you can just open a new tab and have your design up. So this is really easy to do. So we can see the navbar here and it's got Ali's logo here, and these are the 3 links that we want to add. So we've got this for reference. So let's add this to the navbar here. So it's got Ali's main site. I'm just going to quickly copy and paste this in because this is just text here. And if you just double click, it can just change basically the text. So I'm just going to quickly paste this in. Alright, that's looking great. So we've just copied and pasted the links in, and the next thing we want to do is add the image. So what you can do is export this image from Figma. So you click design and go to export, and then I suggest doing SVG because it makes it scalable on different device sizes. And that's being exported, and you can add this directly to Webflow. When you go onto the panel on the left here, you can upload images. So this is going to be in my downloads. I'm just going to quickly add this, and there we go. What we've done there was just go to the image and drag it in. And now we've got the main styles. Let's start actually styling how this navbar looks. So we see this has got the navigation text, and this is actually using a font called DM Sans, and the font on Webflow, they all use Google fonts as well. As mentioned in the first video, Figma offers web fonts, so does Webflow. However, you have to add the relevant web fonts that you want to use. So to do this, we go to the project settings. So we go straight to fonts and we're going to look for DM Sans. So let's just quickly press D, and then we got DM Sans, and then you add all the relevant font weights that we're going to use. So now heading straight back into the navbar, we can add the DM Sans font. So if we go back into the navbar, you can see that DM Sans has been added, and you can see there's a class here called Navlink, which means that anything with Navlink attached to it will use the same font stylings. So let's quickly use Navlink here, and we need the font to be 20, and the font weight here is medium. So let's quickly do that. Medium, and font weight is 20. Okay, cool. So next thing we want to do is change the background color of this. So let's quickly check. And this is using Robo White. And Robo White we know is basically a completely white color. So let's just change that to white. And let's add this as a swatch. So a swatch means we can reuse this everywhere. And let's call that as Robo White as well. Great, so we've got something really similar here. The only thing this has got is a drop shadow at the bottom, which we created. So when you double click, you can see we have all of these shadows here. So let's add this to our navbar as well. So remember to click at the top of the navbar, and they call them box shadows in Webflow. And we just want to quickly add our box shadows. So going into Figma, you can go into the inspect as mentioned before, and you can see the values that need to be added here. So there's a drop shadow of X and Y of 5, and then it's got the hex code of DDDD and 90%. So I'm just gonna add these in. And the last thing we want to do is click the settings cog and add the URLs of where the site is going to go to, and click the open in new tab so it allows the user to go to a new browser tab. So we're going to add the links of where these websites go to. So this goes to Ali's main site, so I'm going to quickly fetch that URL and add all of those in. So I'm going to quickly do that. Add some the Hey Friends, I'm Ali container. So there's not a direct Webflow component for this, but it's really simple to do. So what you want to do is go to the add panel here and add a section. So a section is a new part of the individual part of the website, and what we're going to do is add a container similar to the navbar, and the container centers everything inside this frame. So what we're going to do is add the text inside. So we can just quickly go here and see the Hey Friends, I'm Ali. Where we go on Webflow is you click the plus, and this is going to be a text block. So we add the text block inside this container, and then we'll just copy this text in here. However, the text doesn't have any of these stylings, so we can make a class here and call this header, and we're going to add all the properties. So when we go to inspect here, we can see this has got the font DM serif display, weight 400. So let's add this here. So with DM serif display and DM serif, and the weight was 400, the size was 52, so this has to increase quite a bit. So if we go to the font here, we'll see height. So the height is the size of the box, so we're going to just quickly add the same properties here. Right, that's looking great. Then the next thing we're going to do is add another text block of the I'm a doctor, YouTuber and podcaster bit. So same as before, I'm going to quickly speed this up and add another text block. Make sure that's inside the container, otherwise it's not going to center. This is great. I've just added the paragraph text, and one thing we want to do is make sure that we're all using the right colors. So they're using just black here. We can add a style to both of them called just black. So we know the hex code's 000, and then we can create this swatch here and call it just black. That's now been created, and we can go to the text here and add just black here as well. And the text is looking great. And the next thing we want to do is add the padding. So we can see there's 9 pixels, we can change that to 8, and we can see there's 80 pixels on the top here as well. So let's quickly add the padding. The way you simply do this is you click on the body text here and you go to the top here and it says spacing. So what we're going to do is add a margin of 8 to the top. So this is going to separate the two content, the content between the top and bottom by 8. And now that's separated. And then what we're going to do on the container is add some margin to the bottom. So we knew that's 80 pixels, so we're going to add this here as well. So we want to add some spacing to the top and bottom like this design here. So there's 80 pixels of spacing at the top, and then the container is separated by 104 pixels. So if we click on the container here, because this is the topmost element, we can add some 80 pixels to the padding at the top, and then we can add some margin of 104 to the top. And now the container is now separated from the navbar and it's living by itself. So the padding has now been sorted. Next up is creating this borderline. So what we're going to add is the border at the bottom. So remember, inspect tab and then look at the properties. So we know the height of this border is going to be 2 pixels and the width is going to be 392. An easy way to achieve this look is to go to div block, add this to the container, and we're going to add the max width is going to be 392. And the way we're going to achieve this look is by adding a background. So if I add a background, we can see here it's now added to the whole of this div block. But what we want to do is reduce the height of this div block. So right now the height is set to 0 pixels. An easy way of achieving this is just adding some padding of 2. And we've now got the same look, but one thing we need to do is check that there's more spacing at the bottom here. So if we go into here, we can see the spacing of 25, and we can just quickly add that. I'm going to change this to 24 to keep it in the 8 pixel grid system. And I don't want to leave Chrome there, but we've now got a really similar look of what's going on inside this container. The last bit we want to add is the image, and then we can do the styling. So to get this image, just click on it and export it, and then like last time, it will just add it to your downloads. And now we're gonna head straight into the assets, upload the downloaded image. And this actually comes rounded already for you because it's coming directly from Figma. And what we're gonna do is add it to the container here. So you can see on the design that if we press the grids, this is actually living on a separate part of the grid. So this container is taking 12 columns of the grid, but you can actually break this down into another grid in itself. So what we're going to do is separate the image into a grid and the text into another bit of a grid. So the way to achieve this on Webflow is you go straight into the add, and then we can add some columns. So I'm going to add some columns here, and we're going to make this a 2-column layout, and we're going to click show all settings here, and we're going to customize this so it's taking 9 columns here and 3 for the image. We could drag the image into here, and then we can drag all the rest of the content inside here. And as you can see, the image is now aligned next to the text, which is perfect. So the last bit we have to do now is add all the styles to this container. So the last bit we're trying to achieve is add the neuromorphic container, so the effect of the shadows. So the first thing to note is the color of the background of the container is not white. F3, F3, F3. So go to the container, go to the styles here, and we're gonna add a background color. So we're gonna go all the way to background here, and we're gonna add that hex code F3, F3, F3. And if we click the add, we can add it as a swatch of white, so we can reuse this throughout. And now the next thing we want to do is add this border. So there's a border around, and we can see it's a 1 pixel and it's white for border. So we can quickly add a border here. So this is making a line, and we're gonna add a white border, and that's sorted. So we want to add some padding to the left here, because we can see that the text is too close. So again, we go into Figma, we hold down Option, and we can see this padding of 112 to the left. So we're gonna go to the container and add 112 padding. And there we go. There's the padding on the left. And then the next thing we want to do is do the same for the padding on the right. And we want to make sure there's 112 on the right as well. And the next thing we want to do is add some padding to the bottom. And this is 106. We can make that 104 because it's a multiple of 4. Great. So we want to now round the edges. So we can see if we double click onto the card, there's a radius here of 14. And then simply, if you click on the container, you scroll down and look for the border radius. So this is border radius here, we add 14. And now our card is looking very similar. We've now got the edges sorted. So let's now add the drop shadows. So like earlier for the navbar, when you click on the container, you just have to click on box shadows, and we're going to add the relevant shadows here. So there's 2 drop shadows, -28, -28, and then 24, 24, and the colors are white and a DAB. So I'm just going to quickly add these. So when adding these shadows, one thing to do is select the degrees, which is going to be 315, and we're going to select this to be white. Gone to the box shadows and added the relevant shadows here. So the 90 degrees, the distance is 30, the blur is 30, and then the same here. You can go in and check this white, the hex code, and then the alpha is 60, and it gives us this effect. We've got the border radius on the outside. And then when you click on the container here, if you go to the top, the max width set to 1040 pixels, because that's what we've been following on the Figma design here of 1040 pixels. So next up is the productivity courses cards. So to start with the productivity courses, it's best to add a new section. So go to the left, add elements, and we're gonna add a new section by dragging it underneath. And then we're going to add a container inside the section, just like we did before. And what we're going to do is add the productivity courses header. So to do this, you again go to the add here, and then add here a heading, and then we can add the relevant copy. So it says productivity courses. You can just copy and paste this in. And then what we can do is here we've got a class called header, and it's following basically the same styling. So we can change that to header. And that gives us the same effect. And what we want to do is add some margin to the top to add some space between this card and the courses. So the spacing we've got here is 96, so what we can do is click on the section and add 96 spacing by typing it in here. Great, so now we're gonna make one of the cards. Because there's 2 cards here, but we can add a third on this design. to make the most of the space that we've got. So one thing we can do is start off by adding some columns. So if we just add some columns here, and then we can add 3 columns here, so it's going to divide it by 4 evenly, which is great. And the next bit we want to do is start to make one of the cards. So cards, you don't get them outside the box, but you can create one once and then create a component and reuse it everywhere. So to do this, you're going to add elements, and then we're going to add div block here. And then we're going to start by adding the picture at the top. So if you go to images, assets, I've uploaded the relevant image here. And this is looking great. And the next thing we want to do is add the text underneath and the button. So to do that, you again go to the plus here and then add a text block underneath. And one thing we want to do is add some space into this entire section. So we want to add the columns inside here. And then let's add some like padding underneath to make it easier to work with, which is a lot better. So let's just quickly add some padding. So there we go. Let's set that back to 0. So we've got the text, and now we need to add a button. So just add a button underneath here. And we've got the basis of our card sorted, so now we just need to style it with the relevant Figma properties. So again, you can click on your card, go on and inspect, and we can see the fonts here, DM Sans, weight 700, size 26. So let's start adding these in. So if I go here, and then I can go DM Sans. I'm just going to add all of these styles in, and this shouldn't take too long. So now I've added the shadows, I'm pretty happy with how this card's going to look. So the last thing I'm going to do is quickly make sure the corners are rounded, so go into the border radius and add in 10 here, and that rounds the edges off nicely. So instead of copying and pasting this 3 times, we can create a component like in Figma, and we can just change the text by pasting it in and the image and the links, and Webflow will sort the rest out for us. So the way to do this is click on the div block that we've created, go into symbols and create a new symbol, and then we're going to call this a new card, so create symbol. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start to add some override fields, so fields that we want to be different every time we copy this card. So we're going to call this body text, so we want the text to change. We're going to want the link to change as well, so we're going to add new field button btn text, and then we're going to call this like button link. And then the last thing you do is click the image, because we want to have a different image every time. This purple button pops up, new field, and then card image is what we're going to call it. Create a link. And now the magic here is that if we go back into the symbols, this is a new card that we created, drag this in, and we've now got the card. And then what happens is you can now replace the image here, you can now replace the text. So if I type in subscribe to my YouTube channel, this will dynamically change, and all we have to do is change the text every single time, and it grows and shrinks by itself, and it's awesome. So what I'm going to do now is add the other cards and add the relevant images and text for it. So you just have to drag another card from the instance and just change the details inside. We've now got our courses cards sorted, so the next thing we're going to be working on is the newsletter banner as well as a podcast banner. Similar to the cards, we only have to create one of these sections and we can use a component to repeat it twice, which is great and is another amazing aspect of using Webflow. So similar to when we created cards, you go straight to Webflow and create another section, and then we'll put a container inside. So I'm just going to quickly do that. Okay, great. So we've added another section. Inside the section's a container and a div block. A div block allows us to fully customize a banner, and the way we can achieve this look is by basically adding the shadows to the background and then adding the text on top, and then we're going to add the image inside a column. So this is going to take up the 9 columns of text here, and then the image is going to take up 3, similar to what we've been doing before with the container up here. Just imagine it's just a shorter version of this container with the image. So let's get started on that. So what we're going to do here is add a background color so we can quickly see what's going on. We're going to make this off-white, the swatch that we've saved from earlier, so it saves all the property values. And what we're going to do is start adding the box shadows to give this elevation effect. We've now added the main styles to this div block, and it gives a really similar look to what's going on here. And the height here is 169, so one thing we can do is make the minimum height 169 pixels. And what we are going to do now is add the text. So to do that, you go to the columns, and we want the columns to take up the 2 columns for the, so one for the text, one for the image. So let's quickly adjust what it's going to look like for the image. Cool, and now let's add the text inside. So the text will say Sunday snippet, so what we can do is add the text using, again, the text block. And let's quickly copy the text in. So we've now added the text style. What we're going to quickly do is round off the edges of this container. So if we click on the div block, go down to border radius and quickly round off those edges. So we've got a really similar look to what's going on here. And the last thing we need to do is add the image. So just export the image in Figma and you'll be able to use it straight into Webflow. So I'm going to quickly do that. So I've now added all these styles and the images for the banner, and one difference between the Figma version is we're using a different image. The reason being is because the height was causing a few issues when adding it. I recommend going to Unsplash and finding the raw image and adding it directly. That way when it comes to different response sizes, it will work a lot better. But like earlier, we can now make this a component and reuse this. Before we forget, we can quickly add the newsletter text on top here. So to quickly do that, we've got the header text here, and we can just hold down Option and then copy this down here as well. And we're just going to quickly call that newsletter. Just need to put that inside a container as well. So if we call that newsletter, and then inside this div block, we can actually quickly give some padding to the top. I believe it's 24, that's 40, so let's quickly add some margin of 40 to the top. Cool. And this section is looking good, and the podcast section follows the exact same style, so let's create the component here. So now we've added the newsletter, let's quickly make this div block a component so we can reuse it again. So if you press create new symbol, and then we can call this banner. And then we create the symbol. We can now add the override fields like earlier. These override fields are fields that we want to be changing throughout. So we want to be changing the text to make that dynamic. So we're going to call that banner header. And then we're going to change the image as well. So we can replace the image to whatever image we want. And then banner image. And then create a link. So that's awesome. And because these sections are really similar, I'm just going to copy and paste this twice. And now we can just change this to podcast. And then when we click on Sunday snippets, we can change this to not overthinking. If we go back to the design, yep, so not overthinking. And then we need to change the podcast image. So I'm going to fetch a new podcast image and add this. Great, so we've now added the podcast image and we've added the newsletter. Our site's looking great. We can press the I to toggle the preview to see how this looks. I'm just going to remove my downloads. And this is looking awesome. So maybe we need to sort out the spacing, but I usually do this at the end. I'd rather get the content sorted inside the website. And the last thing we need to add is the social icons. So these are going to be really simple. You just need to create one of these components once, and then we'll be able to reuse it 6 times. And we're going to put it in a grid that's divisible, so inside the column, so it basically flexes and shrinks easily. So let's do this. With all the social channels, to achieve this look, you have to simply just add a div block. So we've got another section, another container, and you don't get circles out of the box, but it's a really simple way of creating a circle. So make sure you set the values to be even to get a circle. So we're going to do 130 by 130, and then what we're going to do is add a background just so you can see what's going on. So we're going to add a background here, and then we're going to increase the border radius to like 100. And we're going to make sure that the max height is set as well to 130. And there we go. We've got a circle, and because of these are just going to be repeated, we're going to create again another component. And to achieve this look, it's again loads of shadows. So you can see there's 6 shadows here, so all we have to do is just copy all of these in. So I'm just going to quickly do this. I've added the social button here, and we've added all the styles, and then I made a component. I made this website earlier, so when you double click and you go down, you can see all these shadows that I've added. So just basically get the look and feel that you want, and create the component, and you should be good to go. So we've added all the social buttons, and then we've added a quick footer here, which is adding a container, and then adding a div block inside. So this is the main basis of the website. I've sorted out all the padding on this one, and go into the link in the description below to see the live site. So hopefully this was useful, and the next episode we're gonna make it responsive. So how we're gonna achieve a look of it working well on mobile, that's what we're gonna focus next on the next episode. But now you've basically created yourself a desktop website and you're nearly good to go. So like, job well done. This is like really great stuff, and I'm sure you've learnt loads, and honestly it's been amazing for you to get to this point. So be sure to send me a tweet or message me on Instagram your progress, because I'll be really pleased if you manage to make it to this point and actually develop the site. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. We've now developed the website for desktop and it's looking awesome. In part 3, we're going to be making it responsive for mobile, so be sure to subscribe. Put a comment down below how you got on with this tutorial and if you're liking this content. and be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.